Hello and welcome to BonkTable. I'm Mass, and this is another Conquest quick review. So, today's faction is Citystates. I'm just going to go a quick 15-20 minute review of the faction, discuss a couple things that players need to know about it. The first one did very well, so we're going to go through the rest of the game. So, first things first about the Citystates factions, we got to talk about its army rules and how it's a little different than similar factions. I mainly want to say 100k because there's a lot of similarities in just how they play out because they're both humanoid factions, a lot of wound 4, stuff like that, a lot of 4 attack, clash 2 and 3, stuff like that. But Citystates has a lot of brute options as well as a lot of monster options, while 100k has more focus on cavalry. So Citystates kind of wants to be the faction that runs big bricks. However, due with the current meta of the game, big bricks isn't really something a lot of people see. You're probably going to see maybe one big brick, not a bunch of them. The problem with big bricks is that they have trouble moving and getting around the table and finding a good position to be in without being flanked and then just kind of chowed down on by a bunch of different units. So you're probably going to run maybe 1 or 2 bricks in Citystates. If you don't know what a brick is, it's just something bigger than the MSU. So usually 6 to 7 stands of just stuff. You'll have a character and so on. For Citystates special rules and why you're kind of playing Citystates is you're going to be doing the auxiliary stands, where you're going to be adding a stand onto a regiment that traditionally couldn't be there. So here on the right we have the auxiliary stands with the Minotaur Haspis, the Minotaur Thyron, and the Sacred Band Veterans Auxiliary. They don't get a movement stat, they don't get a defense stat, they don't get a resolve stat or evasion stat. Those are all based upon the original unit. However, their volley, clash, attacks, wound, and any special rules they have will be based upon them. They are one of the few things that kind of die last in the regiment. So, you have your regiment, they have their command stand. If they have a character, the character has to be beside the command stand, and then the auxiliary stand has to be beside the command stand. So if you have a character in a regiment with an auxiliary stand, you're going to be minimum 3 wide, and then whatever additional stands can either extend wider or go with the back. So Citystates kind of encourages building bricks just because of how wide they're going to be innately. So they have a lot of power kind of up front, and they're going to be using the support rule. The auxiliary stands, they cost points. You add them into the army builder. So here's the army builder, hoplites, auxiliary stands, grab a Hespis for 50 points. So now this is going to be 3 stands base, 4. Now with the auxiliary, through a character, it's 5 stands. So already you're getting kind of big there, but that's just how they kind of work. Just got to watch out that you don't move the auxiliary stand away from the command stand on the front rank, as well as the character. So that's why I'm saying the minimum size you can be if you have a character is 3. If it's just the regiment and the auxiliary stand, the biggest your frontage is 2. So they allow you to just add extra oomph. The Minotaur Thyron and the Minotaur Haspis, with Cleave 1 and Cleave 3 there, with their additional attacks and their wounds, just gives a big old tanky block in there that your opponent has to kill before they actually wipe out the regiment, giving you time to hold on a little longer or heal them if there's any healing, usually off the Sacred Band. That can be used. So that's one of the unique things out of Citystates. The other unique thing about Citystates is, if we scroll down, is a strategic stack. So this has kind of changed here and there, I want to say. The big thing about the strategic stack is that once per round, when you draw a regiment's card, but it's not a character, you could put that card off into a separate pile that is called the strategic stack. It's face down. And when you want to, you can, on your turn, you can flip it over and reveal it as play that card. This has recently changed. So now you may choose to activate the strategic stack card first, then your regular command card, by how I read this, or you can do it the other way where you can do command card and then your strategic stack card. You may opt to do these things as long as there's a command card in the strategic stack. You can do it once per round. You can put it in there. The other thing from being drawn from the strategic stack is that you will now have always inspire. This will override phalanx, which is a rule that really popped up in Citystates. So phalangites have phalanx, hoplites have phalanx. There might be 1 or 2 other things that have phalanx, but I think those are the big 2 offenders. So this will override the never inspire from phalanx, what allows you to get the inspire. The next thing that has been added into the strategic stack is a lot of the regiments in City-States gained a bunch of, from the strategic stack ability, do X things. So I believe Phalangites, they gained Wall of Pikes. When they activate from the strategic stack, they gain Aura of Death 6. Well, you can only do one thing from the strategic stack. You usually want to have that thing held at a certain point because you can like opt to put a card in. That's your kind of your draw step. It's your opponent's turn, so you can use it to stall, and then you can have that activated last, and so on. However, if you want to get some work done, so let's say you want the Phalangites to go first, but you don't really want to put them in the strategic stack because there's something else in your list that needs to be kept more safer to still use that type of play of like shooting out and hitting somebody. You now have the direct orders rule, where part of an entourage movement from a character, that regiment has also been counted as activate from the strategic stack. So this will help out a lot for any of these abilities that require from activating from the strategic stack, like the Wall of Spikes from Aura of Death. I believe the Thor Keaties have... does it take cover? No. Does it change the flanks? When they activate the strategic stack, they get fluid formation. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that was added. I know there was complaints about it where it kind of weakens City-States, but a lot of the stuff was just added in lieu of. So like nothing really changed. They just gained more abilities, but now there are more ways to activate those abilities, especially off your characters. I wouldn't be surprised if City-States used more than like 2 or 3 characters. Maybe they'll get up to 4 characters. A lot of the times, we'll talk about the chariots, but the chariots kind of allowed City-States player to fill out a ton of cards and also not fill out a ton of slots, warband slots. Those are kind of the big ones, especially from the army rule and the army itself. You're going to be getting additional stands, what are big and bulky, do a ton of damage. You're going to be manipulating with the stack, with the strategic stack, and also getting those different abilities from the direct orders. So overall, pretty nice. It's smoothed out the curve a lot since the update in September. As per the supremacies in the regiments, I'm not going to go like super deep into everything because once again, this is supposed to be a 15-20 minute review. If you want something deeper, you can, get in the comments, request a podcast, and I can try and go deeper in that. But big things that are changed is the Aristra. The infantry tactics, once per game at the beginning of the round reinforcement phase, may decide to reroll failed reinforcements made by that reinforcement phase. This is a really strong one. Would not be surprised if that one still got used. There's not a ton of flank in City-States, so this will smooth out your reinforcement curve, especially on turn 2, because there's a lot of mediums and a lot of good mediums in City-States. Also, they've changed how their battlefield orders and their battlefield drills work. Yeah, so their battlefield orders and battlefield drills seem to be, you either get one or the other. It's within 12 of the character, and you do it once per their activation. You get to pick one of the two. Adds a little bit of additional things you can do for regiments. Fight in the Shades, pretty good. Surviving against shooting attacks. Untouchables, another nice one, as well as Bravery. But the Polo Mark ones I find to be much better than the Aristas, but you're still going to see both. Overall, City-States characters seem to be doing pretty decent, to say the least. Mechanist Supremacy. When placing a command card in your stack, reveal it to your opponent and then select a regiment currently on the battlefield. The command card would activate until end of round against Harden. To a maximum of 2. That's not really that great, to be honest. Army Alliance is still good, giving +1 clash and then getting the Tenacious 1 rule. Friendlies within 10 also may reroll morale rolls of 6. That's actually a really solid one. Polomark Warlord is actually pretty good. And then once per game, you reveal the top card of your command stand and may choose to automatically win the Prio Whirl. That's also good. It doesn't allow you to like chain activate because you have to show your command stack card, but you could draw him, show him. Yes, it has to be him. If the card is him, he may automatically win this round's priority roll. So it's just saying like him and then an entourage. So you're spending 2 cards to go first. That's a nice little one. However, I do think the reinforcement curve smoothing out from the Arista is going to be kind of the better one. Hammer and Anvil from the Apokos. He's going to be focused on Cav and Chariots. We'll do the Cav and Chariot talk after this, and also the Jotnar and the Giants and stuff, or the Titans quotes. But this is going to give you additional damage when you're in the flank, what you want to be in. However, you can also shut down scoring if you're in the flank. This has changed. It used to be from the front, but now it's in the sides, so just be aware of that when you're using the Supremacy. The Cav is wound 4, so we'll just scroll down here to the Companion Cab. The Companion Cab got a little bit of a glow up. They're kind of a steal for 140, to be honest. They got good clash attacks, good speed, Dread, Impact 3 at Brutal 1. Like, this is all a really good stat line. Their issue is that they're D2, E1 with 4 wounds. Like, they're asking to be shot to death. The thing that's keeping them alive is their movement 8. And if you have an Apokos in that regiment, he's going to be taking the impact resistant alloy, what's going to give them Tenacious 1. Try and keep them alive. They kind of get shot up pretty easily, but they have the speed and distance to get there and do a bunch of damage. He also has Close the Gap. Is that... Yeah, he gives Unstoppable to the regiment. One of the big things about City-States is that there's a lack of Unstoppable in their list building and design. It's designed like that, so you have to be careful. Like, Haspis have Unstoppable, but I don't believe the Thyrans do. They do have Juggernaut, so they do have a fixed set charge rate of 11. Still very good, but your opponent just sits 11.1 away from you. We'll get into the Chariot. So the Chariot is kind of the what everyone sees out of City-States. People, you know, initially you see City-States and you go, oh, they're going to be like a Bronze Age army with a lot of troops, a lot of guys running around, a lot of big bricks of guys hitting each other and grinding it out, and that's how I'm going to win the battle. Sadly not. You are going to have a brick or two. Phalangites are a good use of that brick. They've got a little bit of a glow up with Clash 3, 5 attacks, Support 3, with their Phalanx, Spike Formation, Wall of Spikes. Like, all these abilities just kind of make them super annoying to deal with. They have a good stat line. They're cheap enough, with additional stands being pretty cheap as well, that you can build a very effective brick out of Phalangites. However, once again, Wound 4 is the big restrictor on the infantry. I think every single thing that's a human is Wound 4. Hoplites, Phalangites, Solenoid, Thorakides. Oh, not Clockwork Hoplites, because they're a robot. They're Wound 5, so good on them. Sacred Band, you're also Wound 5, so good on you. But yeah, besides that, like, a lot of your mainstay stuff is going to be Wound 4. What falls into the problem of being Wound 4, where you just kind of die to chip damage really effectively. And just kind of a poor dice roll to chip damage. You could lose a stand here or there. A decent hit, you can also lose a stand. It just cascades, so that's one of the issues of City-States is watch the size of your units. Be careful you're not taking too much chip damage. Be able to project your threat and get into your opponent before you take that damage and then lose out on your ability of having a ton of wounds in that brick and the ability to deal a ton of damage back with support, and not lose it all to like chip damage or someone hitting you before, just due to your size. So that's where the Chariots come in. Chariots have a small footprint. They're 2 stands, but they're 1 stand in front of the other. But the big thing about them is that they're pretty cheap at 130 points. They're a very good gun. So you have 2 variants. You have the Scorpios and the Phlogigan. Scorpios, I believe, is the one that a lot of people go for because it's range 14. Longer range, they're not going to get to people, so on and so forth. Their volley 2 is a lie. They have dead shots, so it gives them aim shots. It means they're always aiming, so they're actually volley 3 the entire time. They can shoot out of their flanks. If they shoot an opponent in their flanks, they're going to be doing additional hits. It's either exploit flanks. Yeah, your opponent gets to reroll successful rolls of 1. That's awesome. As well as they have rapid volleys. So every time they roll a 1, it's additional hit, and they're AP 1. So yeah, they're also like pretty quick at speed 7 running around. They're going to be doing a ton of work with their guns. And on top of that, in their list building, each slot of chariots can be 1 or 2 chariots. You don't have to, like, if I add another warband here, chariots, and then we'll just, grab 2 Scorpios. There's 1 chariot, duplicate, there's 2 chariots. So there's 4 chariots and 2 units in this warband. So this warband is actually like 1, 2, 3, 7 cards all in 1 warband. So that's actually really nice for list building there. Chariots do a lot for the faction. Just the condension of table space to allow their bricks to get through, and as well as moving alongside their bricks to protect their flanks, providing that range support. They're mediums, so they get to sit on zones very well. They are speed 7 with Vanguard 4, so they're going to be scoring turn 2 very effectively if they're on the table. The Chariot just does a lot for the faction. If you're a City-States player, to be honest, you're going to be owning between 2 to 4 Chariots. The power of the chariots is also going to determine how well kind of City-States is doing, because they're such a fundamental unit for the faction, more so than everything else in the faction. And that's why I'm very much the advocate of, like, you should own chariots. Don't shy away from them. They are what makes this faction work, and you need to get them. Some other things in the faction, we kind of get into, like, their brutes. So we got the Eidolon character. You might see him every once in a while. He'll be running with Inquisitors. Inquisitors are a fun unit. They're actually, for 180 points, very quick. A good clash with Flurry and 6 attacks. Pretty good wounds and, like, a defensive stat. They're like a good brute for a beater, similar to the Hephaestus. They're 10 points more. It kind of depends. Like, Inquisitors have the speed, while Hephaestus have durability. It says wound 7 Hephaestus. I am pretty sure those guys are actually wound 6. Minotaur Hespis are 6 wounds. So the army builder is wrong. You gotta watch out for that, especially it will get updated eventually. But the PDF always overrides the army builder. Just a heads up. So we caught an error right there. Cool. So yeah, the Inquisitors, they're a fine unit. They're pretty quick. They're gonna do some damage. They're gonna probably mess up some infantry guys. If they hit something a little tougher, they're gonna have some problems. Hephaestus are just kind of your bulk. You know, they're wound 6, not 7. They got some decent. You know, they're gonna be D2 with a shield, R3. Pretty decent. Like, there's some good mediums with Vanguard and everything. They're gonna get some work. Minotaur Thyrans, they're your this is your hammer, while Hephaestus you would think of them as your anvil. Thyrans are going to be a great thing to come in from the side. You need to set it up though, so these are going to be a great unit to support your bricks of hoplites, phalangites, sacred band, any of that stuff. You maybe want to run a unit of Minotaur Thyrans or two. Their only weakness is that they're D2. They're susceptible to any cleave or any armor piercing. To counter that, they've given them 7 wounds. We'll find out how that goes. That is a lot of wounds though, so I don't know. Someone's gonna do it where they run like 6 stands of Minotaur Thyrans as one big brick, and it's gonna be like, oh my god, please. But yeah. Last thing we're going to look at before I kind of get to closing thoughts is the Titans. So this is the Promethean Oracle, the Promethean, the Hephaestian, and the Talos. The Talos is another kind of big unit in the faction, just because that it is effectively a bunch of stands of hoplites condensed into a monster base, if you really want to look at that. And then it also has more defensive stats, so like what hoplites are 4 wounds each. So this is about 5 stands. This is 5 stands of hoplites, just in a monster stand's footprint, what allows you can condense it, and also like you're going to be the same defense and resolve. You're also hardened 2 with was it Blood of the Forge God? Nope, it is the other one. It is the Descent of the Bronze Waste, where you're not going to take any Ore of Death or Decay. In addition, your 6 stands, you don't suffer lethal. So like they kind of have to kill you. You can be annoying with this if you cover its flanks well enough. Usually in the flank, when it goes down to defense 3, it kind of starts to get eaten, especially re-rolling those resolve. It's still susceptible to chip damage and stuff. Like, it's not immortal or anything. It doesn't have the greatest way to outfight stuff. It is just 12 attacks. So even though it has the health and defensive characteristics of 5 stanza hoplites, it does not have the combat statistics of 5 stanza hoplites. So it's going to be a while for it to like fight its way out of a problem, what means it usually gets stuck in and then gets grinded down and dies if it's left unsupported. So don't just leave this by its flank. When you play City-States, you want to kind of play as a wall or a front and bring up all your pieces so that they can support each other and counterattack each other. The Promethean is just a really solid medium. He does have 2 spells. I should say for the Promethean, the Hephaestian, that they have this unique spell casting where any hits they do off their impact and their clash, they can add those priest dice to the pool and roll them for whatever spell they want. So at the end of their activation, they get to perform a free spell. They do require 4 successes minimum than the usual 2. However, once again, I said with the impact and the clash, any hits will add to the amount of dice you roll, so you can get a ton. The Promethean's thing is all about providing buffs. He'll do an offense and a defensive buff and a bubble around him. The Hephaestian, he's all about doing offensive stuff. So like Trident Strike's going to be a really good one. 1 hit per success, Attunement 4. And then Crucible Fire gives him Ore of Death 7. So you could kind of run in there do some impact. Like if you march charge, do some impacts, and then Crucible Fire, it's an Aura of Death, something that, you know, it works. It's happened before. He's also kind of a good guy, you know, cleave 3. The Promethean Oracle, he can become a Warlord, so he makes all your Titans gain Priest +3, so their spellcasting is going to be more effective. What's great, so starting at Priest 5 is going to be good. In addition, when they activate from the strategic attack, they count as 6 stands for the purpose of scoring. This guy is going to be used for running like a monster mash list using Promethean mediums, and then probably 1 or 2 Taluses and a bunch of Hephaestians, and you're going to go that way. The Oracle, he's also going to give Fearless to everybody. Like, he's a really good monster. He is very expensive. I believe his warband, however, is only 2 slot. He's going to provide a lot to a monster mash list. You might want to dip into an Oracle for a Promethean, like a Hephaestian, or a Promethean for a Talos. It is a ton of points in that warband, though. Like 2, 4, 600. That's 680. So that's a quarter of your list right there in just 3 units. But if you want to do that dip, he easily allows you to access it. However, mostly you'll see is like double Oracle and then like a Arista running a bunch of chariots. And that's kind of how it goes. For last thing, lights. You know, you got your Solenoid, your Thorakides. You got Ogma medium. These are pretty good medium. But the Solenoid are just shooting. The Thorakides are just melee guys. They can get an auxiliary stand. You're fine with that. Saturoi are still bad. These are the guys who are going to be coming from the side of the table, and you're still probably not playing them unless they gotten rid of that. So just double check the Saturoi. They did get rid of their comes from side of the table at 160 points. Not bad. Good. They're a good medium. There's just other stuff like you got Ogma for 170 and have fluid. Like that's who they're playing into now. These guys just kind of die. Ogma at least have a chance to live. There you go. So yeah, overall, I like Citystates. They have a bunch of stuff going for them. I hope this helped you like understand the faction a little bit more. Just a quick review. Nothing too crazy here. Don't want to go super deep. If you like this kind of content, you know, let me know. I plan to make some more. Plan to hit up all the factions and then maybe talk about lists and such going in the future. Thank you very much for watching. And remember, you can join the BonkTable Discord in the description below. You can like and subscribe the video. You can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to the podcast, Spotify, iPodcast, whatever the heck it's called. And I hope you guys all have a great day. Bye!